Origin, the latest single dynamic driver from Tanjim. What I have with me here, this is not mine. I would like to thank my friend Edmund for this particular unit. In exchange for him taking my Hidis MP145 back home, I get to play with this Tanjim Origin. So I have already spent like 1 month with it. And of course, because of that, I have to apologize. I don't have any box to show to you, but I do have this carrying case here. And inside, I have found that it comes also with this silver plated 6N copper cable. Okay. And this interchangeable tuning nozzle here, three of them. Okay. Three set. And of course the IEM itself. And you would notice that it is already attached to my own Valkynas cable here, which I will talk a bit more on it. Okay. And the tips that I have chosen to use, obviously because Edmund does not include any ear tip when he delivered this Origin to me, I am using KZ foam tips here. Okay, so let's just have a look at the price and the packaging for this Origin. If you are based in Malaysia, you can get this Tanjim Origin already from Red Ape Audio in Shopee, priced at Malaysian Ringgit 1,002, as you can see here. Okay, and if you are based internationally, you can also get this Tanjim Origin from Linsol Audio, priced at 260 US dollar. Okay, let's just have a closer look at the configuration and the setup for this Origin. This Origin, just like many higher end Tanjim, is made entirely of metal. The construction itself is pretty much simple, no nonsense. Okay, kind of like a bit heavy, the heft. Okay, but the good thing is that it is ergonomic enough that I was able to wear it comfortably for prolonged period of hours. Because if you look at it, the design itself is it's not that large because just one driver inside, single dynamic driver. And talking about single dynamic driver, this Origin utilized the latest DMT5 single dynamic driver technology. And let me just quickly recap this. Some of you, especially who have been following Dongle Madness, would have been probably been familiar with me, having this love affair with Tanjim Zero. That Tanjim Zero was built on DMT4, and this Origin is built on the higher end version of that DMT, which is DMT5. Okay, and the size itself is 10 mm with a very low impedance rating rated at 16 ohm and rather high sensitivity at 126 dB. Okay, so let's just talk a bit more on the accessory included here, which I think is very important because it does influence the sound. As you would notice here, it comes with three different type of tuning nozzle. And upon closer inspection, I have observed that this tuning nozzle, when I look you know, at those nozzle against the light like this, I noticed that the mesh kind of like, all look the same to me. So I was wondering what are the differences between the three different tuning nozzle. They are designated as S for standard, D for dynamic, and L for light. So upon further research, I have found out that, it is not the same type of tuning nozzle that you would find on SIMGOT or HIDIS, where they use different, thickness of mesh or, padding inside the nozzle itself, but rather they use a chamber method, meaning that, Tanjim has decided that, to design the chamber itself, the size, the diameter of the nozzle to reflect different kind of sound resonance. And true enough, after trying out all three tuning nozzle, let me just share with you some of my finding, starting with the standard itself. The standard tuning nozzle is something which I would consider as being the one which is richest sounding. It offers quite a lot of body to the sound itself. And in fact, I would even say that it is slightly colored with the lower frequency, especially. It does feel, kind of like warm from the lower mid-range all the way to the bass segment, but it is also focused a bit more on being mid-centric. Okay, and when I switch to the dynamic nozzle, which is the other one, okay, and as the name imply, it offers kind of a bit more tighter dynamic, coming out a bit faster, tidier, and it does appear sounding a bit more neutral as well. And however, the cons of it is that I do feel that the soundstage kind of a bit now cave in a bit, slightly a bit near field sort of soundstage. So, and then I move on to the next one, which is the L, light tuning nozzle. And that is probably my favorite because despite being designated as light, one of the most important thing for me is that it is the most transparent sounding nozzle when attached to this origin. So as you can see there, I noted there, most transparent. It is also somehow, because being transparent, it also means that there's no coloration. And without any coloration, it does appear slightly leaner with the sound texture itself. But the good thing is that it also offers wider sense of soundstage impression, and it is also a bit more airy. So always remember that the sort of tuning nozzle that you choose for this origin will ultimately decide, the final output. As noted earlier, this origin came with this silver plated 6N copper, which after several testing, I have done several cable rolling, okay, with this origin. And I must admit one thing, it does sound better when I attach it to high purity copper, which does not have any kind of hybrid or mix with silver. And in this example, first I tried with this Nichek Mix PP6N high purity copper. It sounded already better than the stock cable. And what are the differences? The differences is that this stock cable has been designed to be highly resolving. So in the process of doing that, it ended up sounding kind of a bit brighter as well, a bit more sterile, and also lacking body with the sound texture itself. And true enough, after switching to high purity copper without any kind of silver element, it does sound a bit more organic now, better balance with the way it presents the sound. It is, musical as it is analytical still. I do not lose any kind of resolution, especially in the upper frequency, but at the same time, I get better organic balance. First and foremost, okay, the way it presents the sound itself. As noted earlier, it uses the same DMT driver, single dynamic driver technology like my favorite Tanjim Zero here, okay? So the tuning itself, thankfully, are pretty much very similar. In fact, I would even say that, if I wish, anything could be improved on this Tanjim Zero, then Tanjim answer is that just get Tanjim Origin. Because first and foremost, it is relatively, or should I say, largely a very neutral tune sort of IEM. It does not follow the typical trend right now, which favors Harman-ish kind of tuning. So which means that when we look at the lower frequency, you can expect proper balance of mid bass and sub bass. Because with Harman sort of trend right now, there's a tendency to emphasize a bit more on sub bass and not so much on mid bass, or even the mid bass is even suppressed so that the output will be focused too much on the sub bass. I don't like that kind of tuning, but this origin thankfully is not following that kind of trend. The way I look at it, when I tested it, subjected it to different type of music, different type of genre, you can check my playlist in the description below. It performs really well with every type of music that emphasize on bass, especially rock and metal, or even technical jazz. So I am hearing punchy, the kind of bass that you expect from a very good, very well tuned dynamic driver. It is fast, it is tidy, and it offers the kind of texture which I love, the kind of presence and dominance towards that mid-range to the mid-bass section. And at the same time, it does not sacrifice on the element of the sub-bass itself. There is proper dispersal of the decay all the way to the lowest frequency. So the extension of the lower frequency is definitely good. And when we look at the mid-range itself, this origin is definitely very transparent and neutral. Okay, when I say transparent and neutral, I do not hear any kind of coloration at all. Okay, so transparent means that it is faithful to the intended sound as how it was recorded, mastered, and produced. Okay, for example, listening to different type of male and female vocal, it does not matter what type of female vocal, like, usually contralto or even alto, or even let's say soprano, high pitch, right? All sounded correct to my ears. All sounded realistic. There's no hint of warming or drying there. Okay, there's accuracy to the way it is being presented. And the same applies for male vocal as well. Baritone, tenor, falsetto, you name it. Everything just sounded as how they should be. And the same for the instrument, especially when listening to classical. I just simply love listening to classical with this Tanjim origin. There's a lot of accuracy there. Okay, transparency, which help to gauge, to extract every ounce of detail, macro detail especially, with the way, especially when it comes to violin or string instrument, including harpsichord. So first, the attack itself is crisp. It is tidy. Okay, there's no hint of dull edge there, but at the same time, it does not sound overly sharp. Yet another key strength of this Tangim Origin is how it presents the upper frequency from the upper mid-range all the way to the treble decay. It is energetic, vibrant, very well resolved with macro and micro detail, and the way it disperses all the way to the decay state is just simply crisp yet smooth. And the best part is that despite being energetic, vibrant, and sparkly, it does not sound offensive at all. I am not hearing any kind of that infamous pina glare, all right, which means that there's no element of brightness or sibilance anywhere from upper mid-range all the way to the treble decay itself. While being energetic, it does not appear offensive at all, even when subjected to highly energetic or vibrant music. The sort of music which contains a lot of hi-hat or cymbals is just simply flowing and fluent and harmonious. Despite being a single dynamic driver, surprisingly and pleasantly, this Tangim Origin behaves like a multiple driver IEM, very well tuned multiple driver IEM, but it is still a single DD. And why am I saying that? Because it was able to resolve very cleanly, very succinctly, different layering of sound, different source, and different type of instrument, despite, regardless of how complex the sound or the composition of the music itself. For example, when listening to classical or even philharmonic orchestra, which contain tons of instrument, I was able to individualize each different type of sound instrument very cleanly, or even when listening to highly congested or very fast-paced, high BPM rock and metal music, it does not sound congested at all. So definitely that is a top notch. And on top of that, despite being a single dynamic driver, it is also pleasantly, surprisingly holographic enough that I would even say that for binaural type of music, it is suitable, even for gaming or even watching movie. Now, on to the best part. Let's just have a look at the rating and the comparison of this Tangim Origin versus the rest of the competition. Have a look here. Take your time. Let's just take a moment to digest the information that we see on screen right now. And I will admit one thing. I have not been able to review as much IEM as how I would like it, okay, compared to other reviewer. But at the very least, I do have, quite a bit of collection, especially for the last 3 years of what I have reviewed. And what you see here is a collection of IEM, which are priced well above 150 US dollar, all the way to over 3,000 US dollar, okay? And these are the rating. And if you see there, this Tangim Origin is definitely one of the best so far, especially considering for this particular year, this is the highest scoring IEM which I have reviewed so far at 92 out of 100. So just for reference purposes, okay, for your information, this is how perfection looks like. Shure KSE 1500 there, 98 out of 100. This is my ultimate reference. This is how perfection looks like when it comes to sound and pretty much everything. And I also noted there in another green, which is my personal favorite, which is Sivga Nightingale. Okay, but to tell you the truth, these two does not sound anywhere near similar to this Tangim Origin. Okay, because this Tangim Origin is definitely a bit more transparent and neutral as compared to the other two. It is quite comparable, in fact, to the earlier sibling of Tanjim, which is Tanjim Kara, as listed there. And that Tanjim Kara, in contrast, in comparison with this Tanjim Origin, I would just simply say that this Tanjim Origin definitely offer a bit more of dynamism or even resolution and energy. That Tanjim Kara is, to simply put, kind of a bit warm sounding or even kind of a bit too relaxed for some people. Some people would even describe it as being darker sounding, as opposed to the kind of sound signature which Tanjim follower would have been, familiar with. And having a look at some of the, comparison here, I would especially would like to bring up the comparison against two of my favorite, which is Hidis MP145 and also Final Audio A5000. As you can see, both Hidis MP145 and Final Audio A5000 scores really high, well above 90. And the key differences between the three of them is that this Tangim Origin is definitely more transparent and more neutral as opposed to the other two. Because obviously, Final Audio A5000 is a lot more V sound curve, okay? Strong, in fact. Strong V sound curve. And so does Hidis MP145, which means that they exhibit quite a bit of coloration, especially on the mid bass, as opposed to this Tangim Origin. And also, they are a bit more energetic and vibrant and sparkly and airy when it comes to the upper frequency. So in comparison, I would even say that this is a bit more relaxed when it comes to that two frequency range. But in overall, this Origin is definitely a lot more linear sounding as opposed to that MP145 and A5000. And let's just compare it against something like Moondrop B3. Okay, I would even say that it is pretty much very closely matched. The difference is that the way it presents the energy, the sound itself. I have spent some time with this B3, and despite being impressive with the resolution and the imaging itself, I do feel that this Moondrop B3 kind of a bit lacking when it comes to tone and timbre, and also note weight and density. And also the energy does appear to be kind of a bit, too crispy for my taste, kind of a bit agey on top of being leaner. So I am being critical here, but to say the very least, that is pretty much how I see it. And as you can see here, let's just take another comparison with something which is like way more expensive, like this Solaris, Campfire Audio Solaris version 2023. Now, that is one very expensive IM, okay? And when I compare with this Tangim Origin, I would just simply say that, okay, between those two, I would admit technically that, Solaris is more resolving, especially considering that it offers, the kind of resolution at different layer of sound frequency, very detailed with the macro detail itself and also micro detail. But if you were to ask me which one I would prefer, definitely I would say that I prefer Tangim Origin. Why? Because I think on the musical element, this Origin offer a bit more of balance, being analytical and musical at the same time. Whereas I would see that, Campfire Solaris being a bit too technical. And sometimes depending on which partner you attach it to, for example, if you attach it to something which is relatively flatter neutral, it can sound outright dry and bright. But not the case with this Tangim Origin. This Tangim Origin sounded a bit more full-bodied as compared to that Solaris. Okay, and as for the rest of the competition, you can pause the screen, have a look at it, and pretty much it will give an idea how good this Tangim Origin is. Definitely one of my recommendation if you want to spend something which is well above 200 US dollar.